All right, we are looking at the document on man, and it's document 30. So we were on page 2, I think, and we've been talking about the way it's so important that men are men. It's so important that as men we are the people God wants us to be. It's so important that we understand that as men we are here to represent God to the world. We're here to be men of conviction, men of courage, men of character, men of commitment, and that's kind of where we started this yesterday. We started the commitment section yesterday, and we were looking at 1 Corinthians 7:4. And the first thing with commitment, as we're looking at it, besides our commitment to God, is a commitment to be a loving husband. If God provides you with a wife, you'll be a husband, and we need an absolute commitment to our wives, an absolute fidelity to your wife. And the point I'm making here is that your body belongs to her. We talked about this a bit yesterday. From 1 Corinthians 7:4, the Bible says the wife does not have power over her own body, but the husband does. Husband does not have power over his own body, but the wife does. And so the point I tried to make here for men is that we are living in this body, our soul and spirit live in this body, but this body is not really who we really are. We are a spirit, we're a soul. God's given us a body in which to live. He expects us to control our bodies. Part of the fruit of the Spirit is self-control. And when we think about that, we think in terms of our marriage and the fact that we do not have power over our own bodies. As I told you yesterday, God has power over my body, the government does not. Remember that? So when there's a sign in front of the post office that says Uncle Sam wants you, he wants to take your body, put it in an airplane and fly over another country, push a button and drop bombs on people, you do not have a right to give your body to Uncle Sam. You do not have a right to give your body to anyone. God has the right to do that. And in our marriages, we need to make sure that our marriages are marriages of absolute fidelity. My body does not belong to me. I have no power over the sexual use of my body. My wife does. You don't have a wife? You might someday. And so you preserve that. You wait until that time. And this is what God is expecting us. He's expecting us to live that way. Meet the needs of your wife. She does not have to earn your respect. She deserves it. And if we can get this point across to men, and I'm married, and every marriage has its struggles, and we as men need to remember that our wife does not need to earn our love. She does not need to earn our respect. She deserves that. She does something and you don't think she's earned your love that day? No, she doesn't have to. I hope she will. She should. I want her to. It'll be great if she does, but she doesn't have to. You still owe her love. You still owe her respect. So if we're going to be men of absolute commitment, we need to make sure that we do that. In different areas, spiritual areas, are you a spiritual leader in your family? Many men just are not spiritual leaders, and I'm calling you here to be the spiritual leaders in your home, and you've got to start now. You're not married? Fine. You can still be a spiritual leader. You can be seeking ways to understand what God wants you to do in life. Be a spiritual leader in your own life. Be a spiritual leader with the people with whom you associate, and then someday a spiritual leader in dating, courtship, and marriage, and so on. Social leader. It's important that we are leaders in social areas and we lead our wives and our children. In emotional areas, in physical areas, in material areas. Don't get involved in the crazy cycle. Emerson Eckridge has made this very popular, right? Everybody knows this by now. Don't get involved in the crazy cycle. It seems like whenever somebody gets married, two people get married, and somewhere along the way, and it usually doesn't take very long until one of them will do something that sort of irritates the other one. And when that happens, we start this crazy cycle, okay? So maybe the wife will do something that the husband thinks is a little silly, or maybe she'll do something that upsets him. Like, men are very protective of their vehicles. Anybody notice that? Men tend to be protective. They put new tires on the car, and maybe the wife hits the curb with the tire. You know what I'm talking about? And now the tire is scuffed, and it's a brand new tire, And the husband just can't understand this, and all of a sudden there's this clash, in the marriage. And, it's going to happen, man. It's going to happen, okay? When it happens, this is not a time to throw a fit. This is not a time to disrespect your wife. It's not a time to talk parent to child to your wife, okay? We all know that language now, right? It's not a time to talk parent to child, like, why did you do something so dumb? But this is what happens, and then all of a sudden, she doesn't feel respected. She withholds love from him, and it can go the other way, okay? It can go the other way, where maybe he does something silly. I did something really silly one time. My feet would always get cold when I was hunting. So I bought this pair of electric socks, and it didn't work. And my wife didn't let me forget, electric socks, why would you? They weren't that fabulously expensive, but they had these big batteries hanging on the side of them. And it was just kind of silly, and it's like, you're spending money for that? We need the money for groceries, right? And so it's so easy for things like that to happen. It can be the littlest, tiniest thing, and yet then maybe she withholds respect from him, and so he starts withholding love from her. And there's no place to stop this, okay? It just goes down and down and down. So be careful. Don't get involved in that. Know that it's going to happen. Practice it on your sisters and your mother. Be gracious, be kind, be caring. The girls at Bible school and ladies you meet everywhere. Don't get involved in this kind of crazy cycle. Withholding needs spirals downward, and women tend to spell love security. Remember we said there's some things people need? Security and significance. Particularly, women need security. I'm working with a couple, and I'm always looking to find out, does this woman feel secure? Does she feel physically secure? Is she feeling financially secure? She feels socially, spiritually secure. If she does not feel secure, there's going to be a problem, okay? And so security, really important for men and women, but particularly for women, to feel that security. And, I've just seen ladies who are tense and uptight, and you talk to husband and wife, you're working with them, and sometimes just getting the man to pledge that he's not going to leave his job, you'll just see it drain out of, you'll see the tension just drain out of the woman, okay? Now she knows, I do have a secure income, I will be able to buy groceries, and so on. Sometimes life is as simple as those kinds of things. So let's make sure, men, that we're providing security for our wives. If you do not provide security for her, she probably will not express love to you, and so on. Areas of security, I'll just talk about one, and that's financial. Many times men have this ambition, okay, let's make some money, let's make this investment, and many times it's a good idea, but make sure your wives are on board with this, okay? You're doing it before you're married. Talk to your sister, talk to your mother, talk to your girlfriend. Make sure that they feel secure in this. Financial investments and decisions made on finances to men can look like adventure. Oh, this is going to really work, okay? But if it looks a little threatening, it will look like insecurity to the wife. And so we get this tension between men and women, and we have to be careful as men that we don't expect our wives to go along with our idea of adventure here when they don't feel secure. Love our wife sacrificially. Don't be bitter against her. Colossians says, love your wife and be not bitter against her. Now, why would the Bible say don't be bitter against your wife? I think what's going on here is that as men, we tend to think in terms of being left-brained and figuring things out and doing things right. And, as I spent years of my life repairing things, doing refrigeration, electrical, plumbing work. So all day long, you're out there fixing things, right? You get to the place of business, and they say, here's the problem. And you're going looking for the problem, and you fix it, and they're just so happy, right? You found the problem, you fixed it. So you drive in at home in the evening and walk in the house, and you find a problem, right? Do you think your wife was hoping you'd come in and find a problem? Probably she was not hoping you'd come in and find a problem, and all day long you're paid well for finding problems. Then you come in the house and you say, oh, I see there's a problem over here. And she's like, I was waiting all day for you to come home, not to come home and see what I did wrong. So you want to be careful that we don't use the logic that God's given us against the sensitivities of our wives. And even just something like scraping the tire. I remember a story about a husband came home. He saw the tire he just put on the car was scuffed, right? So he says to his wife, where did you go today? And she said, well, I didn't go anywhere. And now all of a sudden the logic is kicking in his brain, right? The tire's scuffed. It wasn't this morning, but she didn't go anywhere, right? And so they're talking a little bit. And then he finds out that she went to the store. And he said, well, I thought you said you didn't go away. And she said, well, going to the store is not going away, you know? And so the communication problems are causing a lot of trouble here. And so, well, then he brings up this idea that the car has a scuffed tire, you know, and all of a sudden his logic is turning a little bitter. Okay, you understand what's going on here? He can't understand why she couldn't put 2 to 2 together and make 4. And say, well, yeah, well, did you hit the curb? I don't remember hitting a curb. And she's telling the truth, right? She really is telling the truth. But his logic is probing to figure out how this happened, because he might be one of those repairmen who was paid all day long to find trouble and fix things. As soon as he sees trouble, he's on top of that. And so we got to be really careful, men. Our wives bring to us things we don't have. They bring to us intuition we don't have. And we want to make sure when the Bible says, love your wives, don't be bitter against them, that's what it means, okay? That's kind of harsh language, but we got to be careful we don't go that direction, and the Bible cautions us that we don't. We're also told in Ephesians 5 that Jesus is the Savior of the body. And so it means that we need to protect our wives in every area. Make decisions together, work together. You know, this is a big thing in our family. When we can peaches or freeze beans or corn or whatever we do, we work together. Our family works together, and we don't stop until we're done. And we all stay with the job until we're done. So I don't go to bed while Lois is still canning peaches. Okay, I'm there. I'm putting the peaches in the jars, or I'm putting the beans in the bags, or I'm blanching something, right? And children help. And that's the way we've lived. And so we were, one of the girls was dating, and her boyfriend was there. Well, I think we were freezing beans or something, and he wasn't helping. So I had a little discussion with him, you know, in our family, we all work together when we're doing these projects, okay? And so we all work together until we're done. And I think it was useful in helping us understand, you know, don't allow your wife to slave in the kitchen or something like that while you're reading a newspaper, or obviously if you've got work to do, that's something different. But we tried to plan those days so we worked together. So just a suggestion for you. Care for your children when you come home from work. I know you're thinking, well, I'm not married, I don't have children, but, you know, file these things away so you have them when you need them. We work hard all day, right, men? Long days, cold weather, difficult situations, all kinds of problems. And when we get home from work, we're tired. We want to walk in, we want a hot supper, we want peace in the home, we don't want the children causing trouble, we want the wife happy, and so on and so on. It's not always that way, okay? And I tell men, when you get home from work, that's when your day starts. That's when your day starts. When you get home from work and you walk in the door, that's when your day starts. If the 2-year-old is fussing, do something about it. Hold her or him. You know, if the 4-year-old backhands his mashed potatoes against the refrigerator, get off and clean it up, okay? Whatever's going on there, your wife has been waiting all day long for you to come home. She looks forward to that moment. And that's a key moment of the day. That's when your day starts. And if you mess up that moment, things are not going to go well. You're tired. Been a hard day. You might have smashed a finger. You might have lost a business deal. I don't know what. A cow might have died. You might have had a truck accident. A million things could have happened. But when you walk in a house, take over, okay? Gently take over. Walk in, give your wife a kiss, talk to the children, find out what happened, gently take over, be the man. Be God to your family. Make sure you're taking care. If you do that, you'll be just amazed at how much your wife will love you and how much your children will love you if you can do those things. To be a father, provide for the family, be a servant. We're under orders from God to serve others, not to please ourselves. Take charge, make decisions. Don't be passive just to keep the wife happy. You know, we'll talk about that a little bit more after a while here, but many times in a marriage, you get this initial tension, you know, and we love each other dearly, understood, we're going to get this initial tension when one of us does something a little silly or something like that, okay? And then many times the wife will be like, oh, what did I get myself into? And then the husband will just collapse and say, well, whatever makes you happy. You know, this is not a good plan. You know, what we're looking for is a way to bless the family, father, mother, husband, wife, all the children. Get involved, man. Get involved. Get involved and stay there. Make decisions. Be a spiritual leader in your home. Be a role model. Train up your children. Protect your children. Protect your children from physical and spiritual dangers, from emotional dangers. There were times when my children wanted to go away and stay overnight someplace with somebody. And I remember one situation, a family we did not know, but was a good friend. One of my children was a good friend of one of their children, invited my children to go stay at their house. I called the man and I said, you know, I'm responsible for my children. It's not that I distrust you, but I don't know you. I said, I cannot allow my daughters to stay overnight at your house. He said, I understand. He was completely understanding. He said, I understand your concern. And they did not go. Okay? So many places, there's so much danger. And I'm not saying be so vigilant nobody can ever do anything. But at the same time, fathers, we're responsible to protect our children. We really are. You know, don't just allow things to happen. You know, when the children are playing in the barn and all the adults are sitting under the maple tree, you know, talking, visiting after lunch on a Sunday afternoon, you know, get yourself out to the barn and look around. See what's going on. Find out what's happening. We are responsible to protect our children from physical dangers, spiritual dangers, emotional problems. And we won't fix all those things. They will have injuries, but we want to be as diligent as possible to do that. Play together, work together, teach, discipline. Playing games is a great idea. As men, you know, can you get down on the floor and play trucks with a little boy? You should. I do that with my grandchildren, okay? Can you play dolls with the girls? That might seem a little silly, but you can do that. They don't know the difference, you know? They don't think about it that you're, you know, a man. You know, get involved in what they're doing, bless them, take care of them, play together, work together. You can learn so much by playing. You can learn so much. We need to learn how to win and how to lose, right? There'll be some losses in life, and with playing games we learn. Be emotionally involved in your children's lives. You need to have your child's heart. If you have your child's heart, you can make mistakes. They'll still love you. They'll still listen to you. If you don't have your child's heart, you can make rules till the cows come home and they'll still run away, okay? You'll still lose your children. You can make all the rules that are iron tight. And if you don't have a child's heart, you will lose them. Make sure you're emotionally involved in children's lives. Find out what's going on. Tuck them in bed at night. Talk to them. Find out what's going on in their lives. Don't project your personal failings and ambitions or expectations on others, like on your children. Well, I always wanted to be something, and so I'm going to try and make sure my children are that. Well, make the opportunity for them, but don't force it on them, okay? Don't try to force on your children the accomplishments you wanted to have, but didn't. It's easy for us to do that. And then a good word to men, only the strong can afford to be gentle. The weak have to be cruel. So if you know somebody who's cruel, write it down, they're weak. You know somebody who's gentle but strong, that's a godly man. A godly man is gentle and also strong. To be gentle is to assert strength. To be cruel is only to prove weakness. And as men, in closing of this part, and we'll take some questions, as men, we tend to go to extremes. We tend to go to extremes. Either I'm going to be the heavy-handed tyrant and everybody's going to listen to every word I say and do everything I tell them, or else I'm sort of wimpy and let anything happen and don't take charge and just let my wife take charge of the home and give all the orders and the directions. We tend to go to those extremes, and we don't want to do that. We want to get right in the center and be kind with strength, give direction, give guidance, get involved in people's lives, play together, work together, worship together, do things together, be involved, be strong. All right, questions or comments on the notes on the subject of man. Okay, if I understand the question correctly, what about men being leaders? Leaders in the home, leaders in the church, but what about leaders in the workplace? Just we leaders in the general public as we walk through life. Many times we do work with women. Okay, can we be leaders then? We can be. We can be leaders as we in the workplace. We work with women. The question would be, are you a person who can be trusted? Are you a person they look up to? Are you a person whom they do not fear in any way? Are you a person who respects them? Absolutely. Are you a person who cares for them? Are you a person who does your share of the load? And I think of Jesus with the woman at the well. You know, there he was in a situation with a woman. Nobody else is there, right? How does he behave? And how does she respond? So it's just so important. Part of the leadership, and you may have a boss who's a woman. You may have a boss who's a woman. I mean, you may be a male nurse, and the charge nurse might be a lady who's been there for 25 years. Okay? So in some ways, you are doing what this person has asked you to do, has set the pace, but at the same time, God has asked you to be the man in that situation because she's still a woman. And you can still respect her, you can still guard her, you can still honor her, even though she's a person who's your boss. The question is, should husband and wife always be in financial agreement? I think it's good if they are. As time goes along and the business grows or whatever they're doing, it's possible maybe she does not know all the details and probably does not need to. Sometimes wives are very involved in business with their husbands, sometimes they're not. I think the important point here is security. And I think the important point is that she's comfortable and she's okay with what's going on. I think it's important that the husband is sharing with her whatever detail, is important to her so that she doesn't wind up one day and find out that we're broke. She doesn't wind up one day and find out that the sheriff is at the door, okay? She should have known that a long time ago. And many times, as I said, in my own family, my mother was a good money manager, my father was not, and so they really should have worked together when they didn't. It's a good idea to keep wives very closely attuned to what's going on financially. Yep. All right, part 2 of our notes here on this page, typical development of pattern of abdication or loss of leadership in the Christian home. What does that all mean? What that means is that when you are getting married and what happens, what we're seeing today, as you've heard me say numerous times, is passive men, aggressive women, angry children. What's kind of the pattern? How does this happen? What makes this happen? Well, first of all, when you're dating or courting, as I said, this class is not about setting dating standards or courting standards. It's not even about the language. But, as you're thinking and planning about getting married, who sets the standard? Many times it's the girls. Many, many times. Well, and then in early marriage, who do you think is in charge? If the girls set the standard for the dating, who do you think is going to be in charge? Just because you said I do up in front of a church doesn't make you two different people. You're not going to change overnight. So who sets the standard? Obviously, the girls have something to say about this. But men, we've got to be responsible. You've got to take charge of your own life, of the situation, and make sure, and when I say take charge, I don't mean the heavy-handed fist-down leadership, but I don't otherwise mean the passivity that so men are using. So many men are just totally passive, well, whatever makes her happy. No. Be involved, do what's right, set the standard, make sure you know what things you're going to do, not do, allow, not allow. Make sure you're protecting this girl. Make sure you're protecting her purity, her integrity, her life, her reputation, everything. And then when in the early marriage, many times we have a couple of bumps. I mean, you get to know somebody really well before you get married, but all of a sudden you get married, we get to know each other at different levels, okay, and we're living together constantly. And many times the young wife will express some unhappiness, and the young husband is just like trying to make her happy at all costs, whatever it takes. And he finally just gives up and just allows her to have her way, and she can just do whatever she wants, and that's what's going to happen. She sets the tone for the family. The husband becomes more and more passive in the home, and this happens many times in the early days, weeks, months of marriage. Then number 3, children in the home. Well, who's going to be responsible? If she's been responsible up to this point, who do you think is going to discipline the children? It's going to be her. Okay? And we have to make sure that as husbands, we're not getting on this slippery slope into the wrong direction. Many wives must assume the role of disciplinarian, but it's the husbands who must set a tone for respect for authority. It doesn't mean that mom can't paddle the children. Of course she can. It doesn't mean she can't give some direction in the home. Obviously she can. She's the mother. But we want to be careful that she doesn't always have to do this, especially in the presence of dad. If dad's there, then dad should take charge of it right away. All mom should have to do is look at dad if things aren't going right, and dad should get off his chair and get in there and take care of it in a gentle, kind, loving, but direct manner. And if we'll do that, men, we need to start where you are before you're married, throughout the courting, dating process, early marriage, and then when children come into our homes, God gives us children, it's important that we set a tone for respect for authority. I remember us watching, I was in a home visiting in another state, and there was a boy, I asked later how old he was, and they said 3.5. What, 3.5? His mother told him to do something, and he said no, right? He's 3.5 years old. His mother told him to do something, he said no. His mom is a really tiny little lady. His dad looks like a linebacker, right? He's about 6'2" and 240 pounds or something like that, right? I saw him go to his son and look him right in the eyes. He said, "You will never talk like that to your mother again. Never." And he's 3.5. I was just gripped. That boy's going to grow up to be a real man. Do you think so? That father was protecting his wife. And we get boys in our family, and you know how we are, boys. We get strong. I talk to homeschool families pretty often, and I watch and I look how big the boys are and how big mom is, right? Dad's away at work. The boys are 15 years old, maybe 13 years old. Mom's 5'2", the boys are 5'7", right? They're looking down at mom. And I get mothers calling me. I don't know what to do with my son. He won't listen to me. Men, you've got to get in there. You've got to be there. And so I say, what am I supposed to say to this mom? It's usually mom's calling me on the phone or meeting me at church or something. I say, okay, here's what you do. She said, I'm nagging this boy, and he sits there and he won't do his work. Okay, fine. Tomorrow morning, tell him what's expected, and then don't talk to him again all day. Call him for lunch. Tell him when it's break time. But no nagging, nothing. When dad gets home, just say, your son didn't do his work today. Done. Okay? Make sure this ball lands in dad's court. That's the only choice, okay? And so, dads, you've got to be protective. We must command respect, not demand respect, okay? You can't demand respect or your children will throw you out. Not when they're little, of course, but eventually they'll tune you out and leave. If you command respect by doing what this father was doing to his 3.5-year-old son, after this was all over, I said to him, how old's your son? 3.5, okay? He can learn. Can he learn at 3.5? He can learn that when he talks nasty to his mom, he's going to be dealing with dad. Okay? You understand, men? Okay, that's what we need to do. He didn't grab this boy and shake him. He didn't paddle him. I don't know if he even touched him. But there was an eye to eye. He didn't stand at 6'2" and look down on his son on the floor. He got down on the floor beside his son and looked him right in the eye. Said, you'll never do that again. So we need to command that respect. We need to have authoritative, not authoritarian leadership. This is what's destroying our homes. You're going to do it because I said so. I'm bigger than you, right? You're going to be bigger than your little children, and they'll have to listen. They can't do anything about it. But if you are going to demand and be authoritarian, you're going to lose the battle, okay? If you're going to command respect by being somebody who's respectable and respectful, you're going to get involved in these children's lives, protect your wife, Absolutely. We need to protect our wives from their sons. Those boys get, I know does that sound strange? Protect your wife from her sons. Every boy gets to this stage where we get strong, right? And we want to use that strength. That strength has got to be channeled. You can never allow that strength to go against mother, sister, any other girl. That's the time you got to get in there. I remember my mother, as I was getting to be 15, 16, she would come up to me and put her hands behind. This is a strange story, I guess, but she'd put her hands around behind my neck and clasp her hands behind my neck and put her elbows on my chest, and then she'd sort of pick herself up, you know? And there I was, standing with my mom hanging on my neck. No, literally, this happened. And she would say, how can you do? How can you be that strong? I said, well, I didn't know what to say. I mean, I'm a man, right? I'm a growing up boy, and now I'm becoming a man, and I worked hard on the farm and all that sort of thing. And, it was impressive to her. And it should be. Mothers need to honor their sons for that strength and bless them. But fathers can never allow that strength to be used against them. Okay, number 4, your occupation. Does your husband hide? Does the husband hide, or does he work with the family? Hiding is so easy. Men hide. You can hide in a truck. You can hide in your business. You can hide in pornography. You can hide with your buddies. You can hide in your study. As a teacher, I can hide in my study. No, I've got to study. I've got to teach tomorrow. I've got a lesson tomorrow. I've got a message tomorrow. Shut the door and let the children tear the house apart, right? Men, don't hide. I know you have to study. I know you've got to work. I know you have to drive a truck. Don't use those places to hide, okay? Those are good things you have to do, but don't use those things to hide. And I know I was a truck driver for a couple of years, and what I saw with drivers, they'd jump in a truck on Sunday afternoon, come back Friday night, okay? Go on all week, spend the weekend polishing the truck, take off Sunday night again, okay? You can easily hide in a job like that. Be really careful. Home life, who's the spiritual leader? Husbands need to assume responsibility for the spiritual training of the children and the spiritual nurture of your wife. Sometimes I'll come home from speaking somewhere and my wife will say, so how did it go? And I'll say, here are my notes. She said, I don't want to see your notes. I want you to talk to me, right? Well, that's important. It's important that we communicate and be the spiritual leaders for our wives and for our children. Leadership in the church, who's in charge, who rules. Many men in leadership are not in charge at home and are controlled by their wives. It's one of the major problems in the church today. We have wives controlling the men at home, and the men go to church. And how can you be a leader? How can we be godly leaders if we're not respectable and responsible to our children at home, to our wives at home? And this whole thing can start when you're 13 years old and you're not taking responsibility for your life. You're not taking responsibility for your relationships, for the way you treat the ladies, courtship and dating, early marriage. And now you're ordained. Now what happens? How do you become a leader all of a sudden? And it's so critical that we're preparing our lives for whatever it is God's going to call us to. I spend a lot of time in front of people, and that's a very scary thing to do in some ways. But, over the years, I have tried to be very cautious and very careful that my life is clean and pure and unassailable. I don't ever want to have to stand up and see somebody in the back of the congregation and think, oh, that person knows something about me I don't want them to know. I can't afford that. I cannot afford that. And you can't either. And now's the time. Okay, so many times men in leadership are not really in charge at home. Their wives are in charge. And I hear children, I work with teenagers for the last 25, 30 years. And what I hear them say is, the dad I see in the pulpit is not the same dad home on the farm. I'm thinking, uh-oh, this won't work. This won't work. And then the children are the ones who carry the weight for the loss of that kind of leadership. So be careful. Many of them involved in destructive and defensive behaviors. It's just sad to talk about, but we're having so many church struggles. I teach groups and I say, how many of you young people have been in a church split? Almost every hand will go up. Some people have been in 2 already or 3. And many times this goes back to just a genuine lack of leadership. And if we're not going to be godly leaders who can lead our people in taking them closer to God, we can't do that at home, we can't do it in our own lives, we're not going to be able to do it in the church. Next generation, this is the good news. Can the cycle be broken? Do you think it can? Absolutely. I talk to men and they say, look, my home was like this. I'm breaking the cycle. Absolutely. I talk to young ladies. They say, here's the struggles we've been having at home. I say, you know what? You can break the cycle. You can. You can do it right now. You can do it by making choices, do it by making decisions, do it by making plans, do it by examining your own heart, your own life. This cycle can be broken. Absolutely can. And many men today are breaking these cycles, and you can do it. Where you've been trained well and taught well, take that and use it. Where there's been a struggle, break that cycle, find a role model. In my own life, my father was an excellent role model in some areas. In some areas, other areas, if I'd have followed him, I'd be in the same problems he was. So where he was a good role model, I followed him. Where there were some problems in his life, I sought for another role model. I looked for other models. And those are the things that have guided my life. And those are the things you need to do too. Where I've been a good role model for my children, they should follow me. Where other people are stronger models, they should follow them. Okay, Paul said, follow me as I follow Christ. That's what I'm telling you. Where I can be a role model for you, then follow me. Where I'm weak, follow somebody else. Yeah, what about the wife making the husband's homecoming a pleasant experience, coming home from work? Yeah, very good point. Thank you. The point being made here is that, and you see this in homes where the wife will say, hey, daddy will be home in 20 minutes. Let's clean up and get really ready for him, And you see these homes where dad comes home and gets out of his pickup or his car, and the children just go running out and tackling him, because mom has prepared them for that. Great point. And they're just having such a good time. And sometimes they'll rip open his lunchbox and see if he left them any snacks or anything like that. Some fathers, if they've been gone for a day or two, they'll bring a gift home for a child, and it makes that homecoming just such a pleasant experience, a bonding experience, okay, between father and children. Yeah, good point. And many times the mothers are setting the tone for the home, and, let's make sure things are looking nice because daddy's coming home, and it elevates dad in the minds of the child. In the minds of the children, all of a sudden, oh, mom must really like dad. Let's see what we can do nice for him, Can really, thank you, good point, can really change the tone of the whole day, the whole evening. Yeah. I don't think people typically say, I'm going to plan for an unhappy home. I don't think they typically do that. But unless you take some positive steps to make sure that there's joy and happiness in your home, it will be unhappy. It will. The devil is out to destroy the Christian home. He's out to destroy Christian men. He's out to destroy Christian women. He's out to harm children in the family. And we need to absolutely make sure that we're taking that battle seriously.